Fred Ozen, you're in today. Thank you for coming in so that we could do this podcast with you. You served 7 years in counterintelligence. You have over 100 hours in training in NLP. You're a facilitator for Psi seminars. You're an entrepreneur. You're a coach in like wealth and just life coach in general. And we're extremely excited to have you in.
Well, I appreciate you asking me to be on. That's fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. You have a pretty wild story, and we want to unpack some of it and kind of get your perspective on a few different things. Not only seeing you at work, my girlfriend did the basic seminar where you were facilitating with Psi seminars, and when I heard that it was you facilitating, I was extremely excited, and I was like, "You're gonna love Fred. You're gonna love Fred," and we're honored to have you in. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. Tell us about what your life has been like.
Well, I grew up in Vegas, and so growing up in Vegas was interesting. It was a small town then, right? So everybody knew everybody. It was only a couple 100,000 people. Like there was one mall, 5 high schools. Everybody knew everybody, and we grew up in neighborhoods, right? So back then, everything was a neighborhood-driven type living. And so my neighborhood, everybody played on the same baseball team, same football team, same schools. Somewhere around the summer in 6th grade, I found alcohol. And that was like the solution for life at that time, right? It was the solution for feeling less than, not enough, not good enough, all of that stuff. And it was like, that was the best feeling I ever had. And all I could think about was, I need more of this. And that sent me on a path of, alcoholism. So I was kicked out of St. Joseph's in 7th grade for stealing 2 bottles of wine. I was a good altar boy.
As you do.
That's right. That's what you're supposed to do. So anyway, that continued on. And then in 9th grade, I got suspended. And so my parents had been divorced when I was young, and my dad was living in Europe. And so they thought if I was closer to him, I'd be more controllable, because I was doing a lot of, I was just a juvenile delinquent, right? I don't want, I don't get into specifics, but so I got sent to a boarding school in Switzerland. So the great thing about Europe is there's no drinking age. And so that was interesting. So I went to this boarding school, and I went to where I slept. It was an all-male boarding school. But every day, 15 of us would be bused over to a all-girls boarding school, because the girls' boarding school offered an English and American diploma, where the boys offered French and Swiss. So we did all our sports down there. Everything that we did school-wise, scholastically, was with that school. Really, we slept and ate at the other school. So it was a lot of fun, right? We did a lot of tours, a lot of travel, but a lot of drinking. And I was always in trouble. But I was a good athlete. I was a ranked tennis player. Our soccer team was either 1 or 2. I was a cross-country runner. So I was forgiven a lot for my transgressions because I was a good athlete. Somehow I graduated. I went to my first year of college in Michigan at Hillsdale. Had a whopping 1.9 GPA. I was on double secret academic probation. College really interfered with my partying time. And so my mom had remarried a guy named Bob, and he was 15 years sober. And so I really convinced them that, I was going to move back home, I was going to quit drinking, get it together. And so when I got back home, nothing changed, right? So I got a lot of speeches, right? Get drunk, forget where you parked the car, get the speech, right? Get drunk, swan dive through the Christmas tree, get the speech. I would come home and I would find literature in my bedroom about, being sober. And anyway, to get away from them, I joined a magazine crew. I traveled the United States selling magazines door to door for a year. It's a great life if you like to drink. And just after my 21st birthday, I was in Dallas, Texas, and called, I kind of was done with it. And, of course, did the same thing. Called my parents, done drinking, I want to go back to school. So this time, though, they had a fifth wheel out in our house. So that's where I had to sleep. And so I was working. I had this little valet concession stand at a bar up the street. And I met this girl. She was a cocktail waitress. I'm 19. She's 35, right? So we start a relationship. I think it's the greatest thing ever. And so one day I come home and all my stuff is packed up on the driveway. You know, you got to go.
Well, it was nice of her to at least pack it for you.
Right, no, it's all nice. And so I'm gonna get to the short version of how you get homeless. So then I moved in with her, and of course, when you're drinking, right, you're just you're a whirlwind through people's lives,
Sure.
right? It's a total destruction. And so then she kicked me out, and then some guys had this flop house, and then they kicked me out. And really, I got sober because I failed at urban camping, right? So I was just not a good street person. My buddy was a GE whatever HVAC repair guy who would let me sleep in the back of his bus. I was working at this telemarketing firm. I would hide out and sleep wherever I could. And I just, so at some point there, I was like, okay, maybe alcohol is my problem. So I went home that day. I weighed 125 pounds soaking wet.
Oh my.
Hair down, everything I had on was everything I owned was what I had on. And I talked to Bob and I said, I would be willing to go to one of those meetings. And so that night was the first night I went. And so let's see, that was when I was just past my 22nd birthday. So I've been sober 43 years. So about 9 months in, he was a former SEAL, and he hung out with a guy named Don, who was a retired lieutenant colonel, flew the SR-71, and then another guy who was the president of a bank. So that was his running partners. They were all former military.
Yeah.
And so they thought, hey, with my language ability and things like that, it would be, I could get into the intelligence field. So I joined the Army. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't let me in the intelligence field because, there's a little thing called a background check. So I joined the Army, and I went in as a radio operator because it gave me a crypto clearance. And so then when I was in Germany, so I always wanted to be in the intelligence game, right? I always was, when you were growing up, right, everybody's like, you have this little James Bond fetish. Mm-hmm. So, but they went, I tried every way and just wasn't working. But I still had it in the back of my mind, I wanted to do it. So I was in the walking through the PX parking lot in Leighton Barracks in Würzburg, and there was a sign on one of the light poles that said, hey, we are looking for an assistant scoutmaster. So because the program, man, one of the things that we do is make amends for what we did in the past. So I was an Eagle Scout, but I wasn't a very good scout because I'm bringing alcohol to the camporees and that kind of thing. So I'm like, oh, this would be a good way for me to make amends. So I call them up and I talk to them, and they're like, great. So that Wednesday was our first meeting. That weekend was the first camp out. So I was in the camp out with the two other scoutmasters, and we got into the conversation about what do you do? And so Jeff was a counterintelligence agent. And I was like, well, that's what I wanted to do, but they wouldn't let me do it. And he goes, why? And I said, well, I have this checkered background. And he goes, well, how long have you been sober? And I said, at that time it was 2.5 years. And he goes, the Army has regulations on that. They're not able to prevent you from different MOSs based on the time sober. He goes, I don't know what it is, but I'll ask my boss. So at our next meeting, he said, I spoke to my boss. He wants to talk to you. And I said, okay. And I thought he was placating me because we have to deal with the kids.
Right.
And so I didn't call the boss. So 2 weeks later at the meeting, he goes, hey, I vouched for you. You need to, call my boss. So I called the boss, and he was the SAC, or he was the assistant SAC. And so I made the appointment. I went in, and remember those big, you were in the military, so remember the big metal desks? Yeah. So he's sitting behind one, and in civilian clothes, and he's got the BCGs on, which stands for birth control glasses, right?
Yeah, I'd actually know exactly that. I have a pair.
Yes,
I was going to say Brandon wears them, yes.
Yeah. No.
And so he is sitting there looking at me, and he's got this stern look, and he goes, listen, there's 1 million people in the United States Army. Less than 1% of the people ever get to sit in the seat you're sitting. Why didn't you call me back? First question.
That's a good question.
It was a good question. And I said, well, I have a checkered past. And he takes his glasses off and he goes, we like guys with checkered past.
Uh-oh.
And they do. And so, so because of my background, it took them about 9 months to do what they call an SBI, Special Background Investigation. And they cleared me. And then I did 90-day on-the-job training at that field office. And then I went down here to Fort Huachuca to spook school. So I did that. And then...
and what rank were you at this time?
At that time, I was a sergeant.
Okay.
And so then, because you have to be an E5 to go.
Raj.
And so then from there, I went to the 107th, which was in Fort Ord, which is no longer there, but at the time. So anyway, from there I went to language school, studied Russian, and then a number of different deployments, around the world. And so I did that job, and then I wanted to advance. So I was a staff sergeant, and so I applied for a green to gold program, which is a little different than OCS. So what they do is they allow you to exit the Army and then enroll into an ROTC program. But everything has to be in line. You can't just get out and go do it. So you need all these recommendations. So, of course, I had a lot of awards and recommendations and commendations. Because when you don't drink, you can,
Actually produce?
Yeah, it can produce and produce better than your peers. Right?
Huh.
So, and I learned all these different skill sets. And so I was on the All-Army Pistol Team. So I won the Commanding General's matches for I Corps. And then we went to the All-Army meet, and I came in third. So then they invited me on the team. And so I was doing that, and then I got accepted to the language school. And the way that it works in the military, there's age cutoffs. If you're a certain age, they won't let you do things. And had I stayed on the team and maybe gone to the Olympics, when I came back from that, I would have been too old for the program I was going into. And I was like, shooting the pistol is fun, but it's not a career. Yeah. So I opted to go to language school, and then I did a green to gold program. So then I went and got my undergraduate degree in criminal justice at UNLV, and I was going to go to law school. So I actually found out what lawyers did, and I was like, oh, my. I took the LSAT. I got accepted into a bunch of 5 schools, and one of the things that the school I wanted to go to did was have you go around and interview like 5 different lawyers, like a prosecutor, a judge, all these different people, and then you have to write a report and send it in. So I did all that. When I got done with it, I was like, no, because I had been on the enforcement side, right? Because when I did my green to gold program, they branch detailed me to the military police. So then I became a law enforcement activity commander, and recalled me for Desert Shield. And so I had, it was all counterterrorism stuff. So I had all that training, and I was like, so I was in the enforcement side, and I thought it would be good to be on the legal side. And then because the justice system is not just. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of it.
And I assume you're practicing military law at that time.
I would have if I had done it, yeah. So, and they would have paid for it.
Right.
And I was like, no. So then I went and got my that standardized test. Took the LSAT, now I take the GMAT. And then I went into grad school and got my MBA. And right after the MBA, they said, hey, we're going to do a drawdown so you don't have to come back.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then Desert Shield. Oh, just kidding. And so then they recalled.
We're going to need you to come back. Sorry about
come
that.
back. Yeah.
We started some more shit.
Yeah. So then they called me back for that. And so anyway, then when I got out, I went to work in the gambling industry. So I did that for a while because I was from Vegas.
Yeah.
And then I realized one day when I was doing that, I wasn't helping society.
Right.
There was no intrinsic benefit. Not that gaming's bad. It's just, for me, I wasn't.
It wasn't fulfilling enough.
Yeah.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, it wasn't fulfilling. And, like I would be calling, it was like I was a casino. I did it on-the-job training, and I did a bunch of different things. I was working as a casino host, and I'm calling these people to come to gaming events, and my husband just died. I don't know if I should come. And I'm like, my job is to convince them to come.
Right.
And
this will take your mind off of it.
Yeah, all that stuff.
You got all that inheritance money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided to
That's
So-
how they get, man.
No, that's how you do it. No,
I
it's
believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. It's cringe.
so then I was like, I want to do something different. So I wanted to get into. I had an idea of medical pharmaceuticals.
Right.
So I applied a bunch of different places. It's a tough industry to break into. I had a friend of mine recommend me, and so I got an interview with Merck. So I flew up to Burlingame, San Francisco. That's where they had it at the Marriott. And there was probably 200 people in the lobby for the app. There was like, I don't know, 20 positions.
Well sought after.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
very highly competitive. So I'm like, all right, well, just, I'm a non-traditional, right? I'm not a college grad. I got a lot of experience. So I'm thinking this is, they'll either like me or won't like me. So I go around it. The process was interview with 3 of the different area managers. One of them would be the manager you would work for. When I walked in, I knew him, and he knew me. We're like, where do we know each other? He was the helicopter pilot that flew my SAC, Special Agent in Charge, around when I was at ORD.
Oh my.
So I don't know what you believe, right? But, things happen way too often to be just a coincidence, if that makes sense. So then I spent time with Merck, and then I went to Millennium Biotech, and then Medtronic, and I met my wife, who was living here in Arizona, and decided that I'd been making money for a lot of other people for a long time, so why not come do it here? So I moved here. I bought a company that did native plant relocation, so all the saguaros.
Yeah.
I thought the construction industry would be good. My brother and my dad were in it. They were engineers. Oh, well,
And for those that don't know, it is illegal to take down a saguaro unless you have the
There's
right
7
permitting.
protected plants here
Yeah.
that you have to salvage. And then, of course, when, I guess, what was that, 2008, when we had that nasty, right? So nobody was moving dirt. 23 of the largest home builders were in bankruptcy. Nobody was building.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I bought a company called NutriHealth Supplements in Cottonwood. Did probiotics at that time. Nobody knew what probiotics were. And so we took that company. We raised $7.5 million to buy it. And then we took it to about 27.5 in 3 years. And then we sold it for $24 million. And then, and I owned 20% of the company. I was managing it. So that was kind of that. And then kind of just set me on the path to entrepreneurship. So I'm kind of like this serial entrepreneur, So today I have a medical weight loss clinic, and then I also facilitate for PSI seminars. So in 2003, I went to the seminar called the Basic Seminar. I went because I was dating this woman, and she wanted me to go, and I didn't want to go. I was teaching 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've been to 1,000 seminars, neurolinguistic programming, interview techniques, human side of selling. Merck was every one of those companies, Fortune 500 companies, sent me to some seminar. So when someone says, "Hey, I want you to go to a seminar," I'm like,
No more.
yeah. And so, but I still wanted to date her. So I go to the seminar, and what I hear is, if you go to the seminar and find no value, they'll refund your money. I was like, perfect. I'll go to the seminar. I'll get the money back, and I can still date her. So that's how I went. And obviously, I found a lot of value, and I kept doing it. And it was really kind of the catalyst for changing how I think, and what leads us here today. A lot of personal development. Looking at yourself, looking at how you think, the results that you have in your life. That was kind of like I said, the catalyst that changed the direction. Would I have been successful in the device industry? Yeah. I mean, I think I would have been.
Seems like you already were.
Yeah.
Doing pretty well.
Yeah. But it would have been, and my dad, he was always like, you work 20 years, you get a pension, that kind of mindset.
Right.
And to give you a little bit about me, when I was at ORD, our colonel, he was a full bird colonel. He had been the G2 in Korea, and he was running our company now. And he was leaving. He was going to get out of the Army. And I said, "You're not going to stick around to get your star?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to go do something else." And he goes, "What about you?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm going to finish up, and then I'd like to go, I think maybe get into the FBI." And he goes, Special Agent Ozen, I like you. He goes, "But I think you're a little bit of a free spirit for the FBI."
It's a very polite way to say don't
It was
do
so
that.
funny. I even had to laugh. So I was like, okay. He goes, "You might try like DEA, fugitive retreat, something where because I was used to working outside the chain of command, not being in a structured environment. And I think that was my biggest challenge with working for somebody else, is that, you know, you have the structure that you have to do. And so, and I think that's why I became an entrepreneur, because of, you know, the ability to be free, I guess, for lack of a better term.
And it's kind of wild too, because most people, if they've not been an entrepreneur, then they don't understand that once you enter into that lifestyle, it's really hard to then go back under somebody's authority and so on and so forth. And more to that, you find a way to become very crafty and high frequency and high results by being a bit of a free bird. And then you feel caged the moment that you go back to work for somebody. And that's not something everybody knows how to experience the right way.
Well, I think people are looking for a system to operate within.
Right.
Right. And then they have a measuring stick on what is successful and what is not.
Yeah.
Right. But that's how we're born. I mean, that's how we're raised, right? We go to school, you got an A, you got a B, you got a C, you got it, right?
Right.
You have a structured measuring stick on how you live your life. And what I found is that the A students oftentimes work for the C students, right? Because you have this, in any corporate environment, right? You have KPIs and measurement tools and reporting, and, you know, everything is measured, you know, probably too much, but, you know, they're trying to figure things out. And then when you're sitting in that environment, if you're not used to being successful in a structured environment, it's difficult to operate. But if you like that structured environment, you know what's expected of you, you know what you have to do, you know what, you know, and so that's, people like that. Mm-hmm. Just, it's not me. And so when you're talking to them about, I could never, you know, when I tell them what happens when you almost go broke, or when you do go broke, or can't make payroll, they're like, I don't know how you live with yourself. And I'm like,
you move.
You do.
You go to sleep that night, you wake up the next morning, you do your damnedest to do better the next day.
Find a way.
Yeah, you find a way, yeah. Well, it forces you to think differently.
Sure, you have to.
Yeah, you have to think differently. You can't think, well, you can't go, well, somebody else will give me a paycheck, right? You got to go out and create it.
Right.
And I think that's, there's definitely, it's not for everybody. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it.
Right. And there's a lot of people that don't understand how to live under that pressure. There's a lot of people that don't understand how to actually give 100% of themselves as though their next meal 100% depends on it.
Or somebody else's meal depends on it, right?
Right.
Because oftentimes you're getting the last check if there is one.
Well, and that's kind of why I said that, because to me, I'm like, my people are going to eat before I eat. Like, I don't let people go hungry at my table, but, you know, if somebody has to be fed, let them be fed for sure. But